Switzerland talks with EU could add fuel to fire, bring more European countries to turn on VDL. Brexit. Britain's success is strengthening the position of European countries outside of the EU against Brussels' demands, sparking calls for more member states to leave the bloc. The European Union's relationship with Switzerland could fall apart if negotiations over Switzerland's place in the EU internal market fail, European Commission Vice President Sefcovic said. Brussels has pushed for years for a treaty to cap an array of bilateral accords and require the Swiss to routinely adopt changes to single market rules. Talks between Bern and its biggest trading partner broke off in May over concerns about yielding too much sovereignty to the bloc. Mr. Sefcovic, who oversees EU-Swiss affairs, said, the EU's relationship with Switzerland is in danger of disintegrating. Should new negotiations not lead to success, the bilateral agreements that were still in force would gradually expire and make our relationship obsolete at some point. Switzerland would have to give assurances it would abide by EU internal market rules if Bern is committed to new negotiations, Sefcovic said. The EU Commissioner's comments sparked exit calls in the Netherlands, with campaigners arguing richer nations outside the EU, such as Switzerland and Norway, are less desperate than Brussels to cave in. Nexit think tank campaigners wrote, Switzerland is not willing to give away sovereignty. The EU seems more desperate than Switzerland for a new deal. Just like the Norwegians, the Swiss feel strengthened by Brexit. Rich countries are not desperate for a relationship with the EU, only the poor countries. Switzerland chooses when to pay the money to the EU. On average, they pay about 300 million a year to research programs in which they want to participate. The Netherlands pays more than €8 billion annually and also regularly tens of billions to southern Europe. Countries such as Israel and Tunisia also participate in these EU research programs. From time to time Switzerland also pays to the EU Cohesion Fund. In short, Switzerland pays very little to the EU and Brussels bureaucrats don't like that. Switzerland doesn't seem to bend. The European Union wants Switzerland to agree to a dynamic alignment of its laws with EU law, a level playing field, a mechanism to settle disputes and regular contributions to EU funds for poorer EU members. Swiss leadership ultimately decided to walk away from talks in May after a draft deal for a single treaty was met with strong domestic opposition, as many believed the EU was striking too hard a bargain which would deprive Switzerland of trading sovereignty. The EU had taken a similarly hard stance towards trade talks with Britain for months prior to the final deal being reached last year, with the bloc's bullish lead negotiator Michel Barnier gaining notoriety for his repeated use of the phrase "the clock is ticking." The EU ultimately softened its demands in the final month of 2020, though, and ultimately were able to come to an agreement with Britain. Switzerland is however looking to maintain a close relationship with the EU despite their decision to walk away from the renewed trade talks in May, with Swiss leadership keen to avoid tarnishing links with the bloc. Sefcovic reiterated the EU's demands in an interview. He added, "We urgently need to know from Switzerland whether it seriously wants to negotiate with us." In November, the European Union urged Switzerland to set out a clear timetable for resolving the EU internal market issues by January. Sefcovic said, "We have to know what we want to talk about when, so that it is clear that the discussion will not last 20 or 30 years. EU-Swiss economic ties are governed by more than 100 bilateral agreements stretching back to 1972. A collapse in relations over time could jeopardize Switzerland's de facto membership of the EU common market that Bern is keen to maintain." Sefcovic gave the example of medical devices, which can only be sold in the EU with the right certification and that would be impossible without the appropriate contracts.